Yeah, hello everyone. Is my voice audible, guys? So in last session, we were discussing about common JS module pattern, and we have seen how to access code of one file into another file. Now I have taken the example of FS module, and we have seen how to create a file. So today we will explore FS module. So FS module is a predefined FS module is a predefined module, predefined, or you can say inbuilt module of Node.js. It is used to manage file system. Like we can create file or folder. We can read the content of file or folder. We can rename the file. We can delete the file. Like this, so many operations we can do on our file system. So to use or to do all these operations, FS module is providing us some predefined object, and that object contains some predefined functions. So we can utilize that object and those predefined functions, and we can do all these kind of operations. So first, let's see how we can use this FS module and create a file. Already that we have learned in last session. Again, we will try to do that. So create a file. So to create a file, there are so many functions present in the FS module, but we are going to use a function called write file. So write file is one predefined function which is coming from FS module, and this function will help us to create a file. So to this function, we have to pass some arguments. The first argument you have to pass is your path. Path where you want to create your file. Path plus your file name. With path, you have to pass your file name. Second argument is data. Data that you want to add in that file. Whatever content you want to add in the file, that should be the second argument. And third argument is one callback function. We have to define one callback function. So this write file is going to call this callback function once the file is created successfully, or while creating the file, if it encounters any error, in that case also this callback function will be called. So let's see how we can use it. So I'm going to my VS Code. Here I am creating a file. Create file.js. Now in this file, first we have to import our FS module. So to import FS module, I am using require function and importing FS module. Whenever we import FS module, it returns one object. We can hold that object in one variable. So here we got the access to one object. That object contains a function called write file. If you call this function, it creates the file for us. But to create the file, the first argument should be the location or path of the file where you want to create with file name. So right now I am directly passing only file name here instead of complete path. Suppose I am saying that I want to create a file called home.html. So when I pass only file name with the extension, in that case, this file will be created in a folder where current file is present. So this create hyphen file.js, this file in whichever folder it is present, in that folder only this file will be created. If you want to create this file in some other location, then you have to pass that path. But to pass the path, first we should have knowledge on path module as well. So right now we don't have any knowledge on path module. That is the reason I am just passing the file name. Second argument should be the data that you want to add in this file. Right now I am keeping it empty string. I just want to add empty data. Third argument, you have to define a callback function. So here I am defining one callback function. This callback function will take one parameter, and that parameter name you can give whatever you want. But in that parameter, error information will be stored in case write file encounters error while creating this file. Suppose this write file function encounters any error while creating this file, then that error information will be present inside the first parameter of this callback function. If there is no error while creating this file, and if successfully this file creates, in that case, this error parameter will contain the data undefined. So whether your file is created successfully or it encounters any error while creating the file, in both the cases, this callback function will be called. So if error encounters, then that error information will be stored here. If everything goes well and successfully file gets created, in that case, inside this error parameter, undefined will be stored. So now here we can manage that error. So here I am writing selection statement and I am passing this error. So I'm saying basically in this error parameter, if there is any data, if there is some data inside this error parameter, it means there is an error while creating the file. In that case, just I want to print one message in the terminal that failed to create a file. Suppose if error contains undefined, in that case, it will become falsy. So if part will not execute, then I want to execute else part. In else part, I will say console.log file created. So if error contains undefined, then else part will execute. If this error contains any data, in that case, if block will execute. So by executing this function, we can identify whether our action was successful or it was a failure. So now here, if you see, only we have one file, that is create file. Now I will open my terminal and here I will run the command, that is node space our file name, that is create-file.js. The moment I run this command, I got here message called file created. And if I go and check my VS Code, you will see that home.html file is created. Now I am trying to run one more time. I will try to run one more time. If I try to run one more time, now again I got here file created. So if I go back here, see already file is there. So your previous file got replaced with new file. So let me add here some content now. Hello. Now again, I will run it. I got here file created. And if I go and check home.html, I got here hello. So whenever you try to run this code, it will recreate this file. If already file is present, then it will destroy that previous file. It will recreate new file. So in this way, we will be able to create the file. Suppose if I want to rename this file, I want to rename this file. So what I will do, rename.js. So here I want to write some code so that I can rename this file. Right now, file name is home.html. I want to rename it to index.html. So to rename, first we require that fs module. So first we will import here fs module in this file. Fs module returns one object. Now this object contains one function called rename. You have to just call that rename. And now here you have to pass totally 3 arguments. The first argument is your existing name of the file. So the existing name is home.html. Second argument should be, what should be the new name? New name should be index.html. And third argument is callback. If there is any error while renaming the file, then it will store that error message here. If there is no error, then successfully it will rename. Again, it will call this callback function. In that case, inside this error, undefined will be stored. So now here I will say if there is any error, in that case, just add here one message that failed to rename. If everything goes well, then add here one message that file renamed. So I am creating one file and writing some code to rename the existing file. So let's run this. Node space rename. So here I got the message file renamed. And if I go and check, and here if you see home.html file renamed to index.html. Now suppose again if I try to run, now here I got error message failed to rename. Why we got failed to rename? Because right now we don't have any file called home.html. So when you don't have any file called home.html, it is not able to find a file. So that is the reason inside this error parameter some data has been stored. Let's see what data it is storing. So console.log of error we will say. So if I run this again, so here see this message is stored. So it is saying that no such file or directory is present. So it is saying no such file or directory. It is not able to find a file called home.html. So fs module is providing us write file function. It is providing us rename function. Just by calling those functions and passing required arguments, we are able to rename our file. We are able to recreate the files. In the same way, I can have manually, I am creating one file here, products.html. And inside this file, I am adding some code. Here I am adding one H1, I will say products page, and I am adding some paragraph here. Now I have one file. In that file, some code is written. Now my requirement is I want to read this content and print this content here in my terminal. So what I want to do, I want to read the content of this products.html file and print that content here in the terminal. So how to read the content of the file? So if you want to read the content of the file, then we are going to use read file function. So create one JavaScript file, import fs module. Now this fs module will provide us one function called read file. Now this read file will take totally 3 arguments, but right now I am passing only 2 arguments. The first argument is which file you want to read. I want to read products.html. second argument here, we have to pass one encoding format, but right now I'm not passing, and I'm passing callback function as a second argument. Now this callback function will take two parameters. The first parameter is error, second parameter is data. So now what this read file function will do, it will try to read the content from this file. Suppose it is able to read the content from this file successfully, then that content it will store inside this parameter, in the second parameter, and this function will be called. Suppose this function failed to read the content from this file. In that case, whatever that error information is, that error information will be stored in this first parameter, and again this callback function will be called. So whether read file is reading the content from this file or it is failing to read the content from this file, in both the cases, this function will be called. If it is reading successfully the content of this file, then that content will be stored in the second parameter. If it is failing to read the content from this file, then that error information will be stored in first parameter. So now here we are going to write one selection statement. We will pre-assume if there is any error while reading the content from the file, then I just want to print one message in the terminal by saying that failed to read the content. Reading the content is nothing but accessing the content. Failed to access the content from file. If everything goes well, in that case, I just want to print that content in my terminal. So content will be stored in second parameter. So simply second parameter I will pass. Now it will read the content, but that content will be in the binary format. So by seeing that content, we cannot understand. See here. So if I say node read, now see content is printing here. But whatever content it is printing from that file, it is in the binary format. So binary format content we are not able to understand. So we want to convert this content into normal English. How the content is present in this file? In same way, I want to print in my terminal. I don't want this content should be converted into binary format and print in my terminal. Right now, this entire content is converted into binary format and it is printing here. But I don't want to print like this in binary format because as a human, I cannot understand what it is. I want exactly like this only it should print, whatever it is present in the file. So for that, we have to tell to Node.js, hey Node.js, whatever content you are accessing from this file, that will be in the binary format. So convert that content into normal English. So to convert it into a normal English, it will follow internally some encoding standard. And that encoding standard is UTF-8. This is one of the encoding standard. So in this encoding standard, some rules are defined. So your Node.js will use those rules and it will convert your binary format data into normal English. So if you get the time after the class, just explore what is UTF-8, why we use it, how it is used. Like this, you try to explore little bit more so that you will get more knowledge on this UTF-8. So it is one of the encoding standards. Using these encoding standards, your Node.js will convert this binary data into normal English. See here, the moment I save it, and if I go and run again my code, now see, I got my data as it is present in my file. As it is present in the file. So if you don't add this encoding standard, then your response will be like this in the binary format, which we cannot understand. That's why we are using that encoding standard and converting it into a normal English. So this is what we call as read operation. We call it as a read operation. Reading the content is nothing but accessing the content. Reading the operation is nothing but accessing the content from file. So here, if you see, we are able to access the content from the file. So here, the point what we have to understand is, with these examples, we have a FS inbuilt module, and this module is providing some functions to us, like write file, rename file, read file. And using these functions, we are able to do some kind of actions. We are able to create new file. We are able to rename existing file. We are able to read the content from the file. Like this FS module is providing so many functions. Every function will have some kind of purpose. And where you will find all the information of those functions from the official documentation of Node.js. So depending upon requirement, we have to decide which function we have to use. And that you can only decide if you go through that FS module in depth. So FS module is so big. If you explore each and every function of FS module, then we will just take 2 to 3 months just to learn FS module. Just to learn FS module, we are going to spend 2 to 3 months. That much big that module is. So if I go to Node.js official website, here if you click on docs, and if you just scroll down, and here if you click on this file system, now see this file system, here we have so many functions. See here we are using this read file function. Just now we have used read file. So like this, see how many functions are there. This many functions are there in FS module. So we can easily take 2 to 3 months to finish this FS module. That much content is there in FS module. So this is just a case of one module. Like this, how many inbuilt modules we have? See, on the left side, you will find all the module names here. Version to version, modules will change. Some functions will change, their names might change, new functions might be added, existing functions might be removed. So like this, version to version, things will change. Right now, the latest version is 25. Just wait for 2-3 months, you will find new version here. Again, in that new version, some updates will be done. So like this, we should be able to use all the inbuilt modules of Node.js. This is one of the module. Like this, we have one more module, that is HTTP module. We have something called HTTP module. Now, what is the use of this HTTP module? Now, using this HTTP module, we can create HTTP server. We can create HTTP server. What is the use of HTTP module? Means it is used to create HTTP server. Not only HTTP server we can create, using this module, we can manage request and response. We can manage request and response for the server. It means using this module, we can exchange the data between two different applications. So it is used to exchange data between two different applications. So what we can do, we can create one front-end application We can create one front-end application. And this front-end application we can create using normal HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. We can create one backend application. Creating backend application is nothing but creating one JavaScript file. Nothing but here we are going to use Node.js. Now inside this backend application, we can create one HTTP server. We can create something called HTTP server like this. Now, what is HTTP server? HTTP server is one small software program which can handle request and response. Now, from this particular front-end application, we can send a request to this HTTP server. We can send a request to this HTTP server. Now, this HTTP server can process the request. It can process the request. Whatever request is processed, based on that, some response will be generated. That response, this HTTP server can send back to the client. Nothing but a front end. It can send the response back to the front end. Nothing but client. So this we call as request and response cycle. So using HTTP module, we can create the HTTP server. Using HTTP module, we can manage this request and response. So we need to learn how to create this HTTP server, how we can manage request and response. What is the meaning of I am sending the request, sending the response? First of all, what is this HTTP request? What is this HTTP response? So many people doesn't have this knowledge. They don't know when we say that I am sending the request, what it means. So we generally use the term front end is sending a request to backend, but actually what it means? What is the meaning of sending the request? What is the meaning of backend is sending a response to front end? So many people are not aware of it. So we have to learn that part. So first we should know what is HTTP server. So HTTP server is a small software program. So what is HTTP server means? It is a software program which handles HTTP request and HTTP response. It is a software program which handles HTTP request, and HTTP response. What is this HTTP request? Anybody knows, guys, what is HTTP request? So HTTP request is a format of a data sent from one application to another application. What is HTTP request? It is a format, or you can call structure of a data sent from client application to server application, or you can say from front-end application to back-end application. So request is nothing but data with certain format. So HTTP request has one fixed format. If you send the data in that format from one application to another application, then that process we say as sending the request. So if you have like this, a front-end application or a client application, and if you have like this back-end application, now from this front-end application, if you are sending the data to this back-end application in a particular format, that structure, we are going to call as a request. We are going to call as a request. So from this client application, we will send some data. We will send some data to this server application. We are going to send some data. Now this data will be in certain format. So this data we have to send in a certain format, and that format we call as a request. Similar to this, what is HTTP response? Now HTTP response is also a data format which is sent from server application to client application. What is HTTP response? It is a format. It is a format or a structure of data sent from server application to client application. From server application to the client application. So HTTP response or HTTP server, HTTP request, both are data format of data sent in a certain format. So if you have like this client application, and if you have here server application, and now if you are sending the data from server application to client application. Now, whatever data you will send, that data has to follow some format. That data should be in some format. And that format we are going to call as a response. That format we are going to call as a response. So whenever we say that I am sending a request, it means you are sending some data. Whenever we say that I am sending a response, it means you are sending some data in a particular format. And that format, they have given some standard name called request and response. What is HTTP server or web server? It is a simple software program which handles HTTP request and HTTP response, which handles those data. So now we have to learn how to create this HTTP server in Node.js. In every language, there is a way to create HTTP server. So in Node.js, we have to learn how to create HTTP server. And the most easiest way to create HTTP server is in Node.js. How to create? It's very simple. So for that, first import HTTP module. We have to import HTTP module. After importing HTTP module, it will return one object. So from that object, access create server function. Create server function. That's it. And just we have to call this function, access create server function, and call it. That's it. HTTP server is created. Just 2 lines we have to write to create one HTTP server. How to create HTTP servers here? So to create HTTP server, just import HTTP module from Node.js. So just use require function, pass HTTP, it will return one object. That object hold in one variable. Now through this object, access one function called create server. That's it. If you say http dot create server, internally it will create one http server and it will return the reference of that server. If it is returning the reference of that server, hold in one variable. That's it. We have created the server. Create http server. This is the single line we have to write in Node.js to create http server. Nothing but it will activate one simple program in Node.js, which can handle request and response. Now, once this HTTP server is created, now we have to run this program. We have to run this server. So to run this server, run the HTTP server. Run, or you can say start HTTP server. Here we have created this server. Now we have to run this server so that it can manage request and response. For that, on this server, we have to call a function called listen. Server dot listen function we have to call. Now what this listen function will do, it will start the server. So now this is our system. This is my system. In this system, I want to activate this program. So whenever we want to activate this server program, now our operating system will ask, what should be the address I should give to this program? So whenever a request will come, I will forward that request to this server. So we have to provide one logical address to our server. So in system, exactly where it is running, that information we have to tell to the operating system. How to tell? For that, we have to configure something called port number. We have to configure something called port number. Configure port number. Configure port number to the server. So what is this port number? Port number is a logical address. It's a logical address for your program. Port number is a logical address for the program, for the HTTP server program. Or simply, I will add here program. So basically, for example, in non-technical way, if I want to explain, so let's assume that my system is one apartment. Now I have a system. This system you can consider like an apartment. Now in my system, I can run so many programs. So many programs will be running in this system. So many programs will be running. But somehow we have to tell to the operating system where is our program. So for every program, you have to assign one unique identification number. You have to assign one unique identification address. And that unique identification address, we are going to call as a port number. If you see apartment, in one apartment, you will have lot of flats. But how you will identify the flats? Based on flat number. Every flat will have some number. Every flat will have some number. So here also same thing. We have a system. In system, so many programs will be running. Now we have created HTTP server. It is also program. It is also will be in the running state. But exactly where it is running, that we have to tell to operating system. So for that, we have to configure that port number. Guys, give me 1 minute. So that port number is like a logical address for your program. So that port numbers we can assign from 0 to 65. I think we have something like 65. What is that number exactly? Something like 625. So in between this, we can assign that number. So exactly, if I want to say, let me just recall what might be the number. So port number can be from 0 to something like 65, I think 625 maybe. In between that, we can assign that number. So generally, whatever programs are running in your system, now those programs will be assigned with some port number. So no two programs can have same port number. So it will be not 625. I think it is like 65535. Yeah. 65535. So in between 0 to 6535, we can assign our port number. So generally it is safe to add the port numbers if you are creating a custom application. If you are creating any custom application, in that case, it is always said that it is a safe to assign the port number from 3000 to 4 nines. So in between this, you can assign any 4 digits to as a port number. And you will see that most of Node.js HTTP server will be assigned with a port number called 3000. But you have to make sure that there is no other program which is running with this port number in your system. So port number for every HTTP server should be unique. So how to configure this port number? That port number we have to pass as a first argument to this listen function. So I'm passing here 3000 only. So I don't have any application which is running on this 3000 port number. So the first argument should be the port number and second argument should be one callback function. Whenever our server starts successfully on this port number, after that, this callback function will be called. So whenever this callback function is called, then we can get confirmation that our server is successfully running on this port number. Server means our HTTP server. So here I will simply add one message, that is console.log, and I will say server started. So what we are doing using HTTP module, we are creating HTTP server. Once HTTP server is created, then we are starting that server on this port number. Now, whenever server will be in the running state, at that moment only, we can exchange the data between two different applications. So if your server is in running state, then only you can send the data from client to server or from server to client. And if your server is not in the running state, you cannot send. So now how to start our server? So for that, we have to execute this code. So to execute this code, you can simply go to your terminal and you can run your JavaScript code. So node space our file name. What is our file name? HTTP-server. HTTP-server. The moment I press enter, here you see server started, message is printed, and here our cursor is waiting. Our cursor is waiting. So now what we have done, we have created like this one JavaScript file, and this file name we have given as HTTP server.js. Inside this file, we have created one HTTP server. We created one HTTP server. Now to this server, we can send the request from our browser. Suppose this is my browser. Now from my browser, I can send one HTTP request, or instead of browser, we can use a front-end application also. But right now we don't have any front-end application. So from this browser directly, we will send one HTTP request. We can send the HTTP request. Now to send HTTP request to this server, we have to use following URL. So the URL will be http://localhost. So this will be common for every HTTP server. After this, we have to add colon, and then we have to mention our port number on which our server is running. So my server is running on 3000 port number. So this 3000 I am passing. So this is like your protocol. This is like your domain name, your local host, because server and browser both are present in same system. That's why we are using local host. Or here you can pass IP address of your system. And this is your port number. So basically we are saying that in this system, one program is running on this particular port number. To that program, we have to send the request. So I can copy this. I can open my browser. And here I can paste that URL and press enter. One request will go. Now request is going and it is waiting for response. Now client is waiting for response. See here, request is going, but it is waiting for response. Right now we are receiving here request. We are receiving the request to this server, but we are not sending any response back. But how we can identify whether we got request or not? For that, to this create server function, we can pass one callback function as an argument. Here you can define one callback function as an argument. This callback function will take two parameters. The first parameter is request. Second parameter is response. Now, whenever a request will come to this server, this callback function will be executed. So when this callback function will be executed, whenever a request will come to this server. So what I will do, just for our confirmation, I will add here console.log and I will say request is received. Let's see whether this message will print or not. So I will go back to my terminal. I have done some changes in my file. So I have to stop my server. How to stop the server? For that, you have to press Ctrl+C. If you press Ctrl+C, your server will be stopped. Now your server is stopped. Now again, you have to rerun it. How to run? You have to execute node your file. So now see, server started and here we got request is received. Why we got? Because here our browser was sending the request. So let me just close this part. Again, I will stop the server and again I will restart it. Now we got here server started. Now I will go back to the browser. I will paste that URL and press on enter. Whenever I press on enter, see request went. And here you will see that we got that message. Request is received. Now once request is received, now from this server, I need to send some response back to the client. So to send the response back to the client, we can use this response parameter in which one response object will be stored by Node.js. So we can use this response object and we can access a function called end. And we can send some data by passing as a first argument. I will say my first response to the client. Now I will stop the server here. I will save my file. I will go back to my browser. I will copy this URL. I will close it again. I will reopen it. Now see here, again I am starting the server. Server started, it is waiting for request. I will go to my browser. I will paste the URL, press on enter. Now you will see that one request went and we got the response also. So this response from where we are getting from this application. So first response to the client. Here we got first response to the client. If I open new tab, again, if I send the request, again, I will get a response. So how many times you will send the request, that many times you will get the response. So right now what we are doing, from our browser, we are sending the request. It is receiving the request and it is sending the response back. It is sending the response back to the client. It is sending response back to the client. And that response we are displaying here. That response we are displaying here. But what is request and response? I said the request is nothing but it is a data structure. But from here, we are not passing any data. Actually, we are passing the data. So what data we are passing when we add here URL and press on enter button? And what data we are sending from here? Here we are sending normal string, but our browser is receiving only normal string or it is receiving something else? That we need to understand. And that is what we will explore in tomorrow's session. So tomorrow we will have the same session, and in tomorrow's session, I will show you practically what is HTTP request, what is that format of the data that we are sending from our browser to our HTTP server. And what is the response we are sending? Right now here we are sending string, but is our browser receiving only string or it is receiving some format, some structure of data? That is what we are going to see in the next session. So in next session, I will show you HTTP request and HTTP response practically. So where we can see that data that I will show you. Okay, so this is very, very important, guys. HTTP module, because this module will help us to develop our chat application. Okay, yeah. So let's connect tomorrow and let's continue the next set of things, guys.